you're not actually repeating the last sentence, you're repeating the last relation. You're restating the last relationship, and all the arguments, if you don't specify them, default to whatever was used in the previous occurrence. So that's the actual mechanism. So the who is not part of it, that's true, yeah. Fill in the blank works for both relations and for arguments. For relations, use the word mo. Just put it in the breedy place. So this is a standard example, la lojban mo. This means, what is lojban? Or more specifically, which relationships is lojban part of? So you would answer to this by saying something which has lojban in the x1 place. And that's all. For arguments, you use another particle. It's called ma. You can use it multiple times. Ma kla ma ma means who goes where or what goes where. Yeah. So this introduces the basic language features that I wanted to go into. So you have, I hope you have a slight idea of how all this is supposed to fit together. Now, how do we apply this to computers, or can we apply this to computers? For all of these applications, of course, you need to assume some level of proficiency in lojban on some part of the user base. If you want to make a lojban human-computer interface, which is talk to the computer in lojban and it will answer in lojban, of course, the users have to know lojban. So it's just a note. And I haven't really investigated these things deeply. It's just stuff that that comes to mind, like interesting ideas that you might want to look into more deeply, maybe next year. So, yeah, talk to your computer in lojban. This is compelling because lojban grammar is actually specified as a YAC machine language grammar specification, so it's the parsers for it, machine parsers for it are really available. Also, the isomorphism between spoken and written form is useful, of course, because it makes it really easy to build a spoken language interface. Yeah, so you can just parse in an entire sentence and you know exactly the sentence structure. There's no guesswork or anything. You just know what your peer is saying, or you, in this case, is supposed to mean the computer. For example, you might want to try to just recognize a question or an imperative, which is easy, as you have seen in the case of questions. You just recognize the little question words. And in imperatives is also very easy, because in imperatives you have another word that you look for, that's it. And then you might want to try just basic pattern matching on these sentences that come in. You know, you have this data structure representation of the lojban sentence comes in, you do a pattern match on it, and you'll recognize, oh, this is a question, and maybe you'll recognize the other parts of the sentence, and maybe you'll be able to answer the question, but there you have a natural language interface. Just do this really thoroughly, and you have a very wide natural language interface. Or maybe you just want to constrain yourself to some suitable subset of lojban. Still, this might be a good thing, a good basis. If you can assume that your users speak lojban, they will be happy about this. Another thing that came to my mind, I'm not entirely sure about this, but you know the problem of internationalization of programs. What you usually do is say GNU gettext or whatever, is you have a base language in which you write all your messages that the program is supposed to produce, and you translate these messages. You have a prefixed translation table, and this always has problems with incorporating dynamic data into the message. Like, say you want to say, oh, there's been 5 errors. Now in English you have to say, what's the plural of error? And you have to decide, do I have to use the plural form or not? In lojban, well, this doesn't apply at all, but still, even if you don't want to produce lojban, it might be a good idea to use lojban as the base language, I thought, because usually your program doesn't understand the structure of its base language if it's English, and it doesn't understand the structure of the target language, so it has no hope of generally producing grammatically correct messages, except you have to look at each case basically, or hope that the structure of the language will be clear enough. For example, say in German, it's much more harder than in English to produce a correct plural form of something, and you have to invent complicated structures to do this in your whatever, and then you also have to recognize the structure in the base language. So maybe lojban might be beneficial. Also, there's auto translation already available to English, which works fairly well. It's of course not perfect, and it could use more work, but it has been available for a long time, and you can usually understand the sentences just because the structure is so clear. Even if it's not real English, you can see what the hell is supposed to mean just by looking at this, the structure and the gloss words. Yeah, another idea is, can I use lojban words maybe to name my identifiers in programs? I had a nice anecdote by Palas, who's going to hold the Esperanto talk. She told me that they had a nasty experience with someone who was commenting his programs in lojban, and nobody else was understanding them afterwards. So, well, you might want to avoid this if you're not entirely sure about your co-workers or whatever is coming after you to look at the code is going to understand lojban. But in principle, as I've said, assuming that you have the proficiency, this might be an idea, using this for naming your identifiers, because as I've said, you don't need pauses. You don't need spaces in between lojban words. It's still paused correctly, as long as maybe you deal with the punctuation characters, like say use another character for this or that. But it would probably be possible, and they are not so frequent. Also, you might again use the fact that making questions and imperatives is really easy in lojban. Also, maybe you could just use the bare root words for, say, naming a relation in prologue, which would be an obvious match, of course, but also maybe functions, because many of the root words have the structure x1 is something, like x1 is a car of brand x2, blah, 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 blah. But maybe if you want to make something that means x1 is whatever, whatever, and that's what your function is supposed to produce, then you might just use this relation word that you made up to name your function. Who knows? Please investigate. Okay, so this is already near the end, quite in time. And yeah. Now, if this is sounds at all interesting to any of you, if you want to learn it, I can tell you it takes only a few days to get the basic grammar. And by basic, I mean not like I go to Maya, I mean including tenses, including relative sentences, including me who has been working at the Congress very hard for the last couple of days, all the way up on the top or something, is going to go to Maya in a few minutes. That's really, it encompasses almost everything. It took me, I think, 3 days to read this, a certain booklet that I have in mind. Yeah, and after that, of course, the problem is you need vocabulary. There's only one way to get it, it's practice. There are programs available for flashcard-based learning, and I've personally found it quite useful to attempt small conversations or small translations and just build a personal word list. Like today I've used these and these words. There's a very nice online dictionary interface that you can use to look up stuff, and you just make a list, and today I needed these and these words, and then you learn them before you go to bed or something. Yeah. For conversations, there's channel lojban on Freenode. The people are very friendly, very crazy also. Nice place. Yeah. So that's already pretty much it. Let me conclude with a summary. I think you can see a a little that lojban is built to be very clean and simple and also precise. That's one thing they wanted to do, make the language so you don't have to use ambiguity. Like, for example, emotions. In most natural languages, you don't express emotions directly. You do it by using phrases or differences in stress of your pronunciation or whatever. In lojban, you have words that you can use to directly express, I'm very happy about this, or I'm not quite so happy. This is open to experimentation. No language has had this, I think I've read so far, or at least not to this extent. But also keep in mind that lojban doesn't force you to use this stuff, of course. You can put all the ambiguity into your speech that you want, if you want, but you can also remove it. So this is quite compelling, I think. Also, of course, it's supposed to be general. It's supposed to be a language that you can use to express anything you want to express. One interesting example that I stumbled upon in this regard is the word I've shown you it's just one character. The one vowel, the one that's written as the Latin Y. You say this anywhere, what does it mean? Well, it means, hold on, I'm thinking. Right? So, and this is specified in the language, in the reference documentation. It's good. So, yeah. Also, if you actually want to use this as a human-computer interface, this might make the return of the command line, I thought. I mean, you're giving language stuff. I read an interesting paper once by some guy who was teaching people to use a computer who had never ever had contact with computers before. He had done this for a couple of years already with varying success using the usual graphical interface, Windows, blah, blah. And he tried an experiment, switching to the command line, the Linux command line. And he found out actually it worked quite well because the people found it easier to understand, to just give the thing a command. As long as they knew what the command was and had a mental model of how the computer reacts to the commands. But this is, in principle, a more simple way of thinking about this thing because it's sequential. You know, it's not there's windows popping up everywhere. This seemed to confuse the people that there was so much stuff on the screen. It was easier to understand for them to just give it a command and see it do whatever you told it. And not interrupt you in doing something else. For example, you've got new mail. Like, your computer screams at you, you've got new mail, or pops up a window or with an instant message while you're doing something important. It might be considered distracting. Yeah. So, the one problem that these people had with the comment line, though, was that the commands were kind of cryptic. One person said, oh, you have to talk to the computer in text, meaning text speech as you use it to send SMS messages on your phone, because everything was abbreviated. Usually you abbreviate stuff in SMS. So at this point, the person understood how to talk to the computer. Oh, you have to abbreviate everything. Now it's all clear. So, so this is, of course, obvious to us, but to some people it isn't. And so if you want to use, if you use lojban, you actually have the real language. So, proficiency assumed. So that's nice. Now, the outlook of the talk is we need lojban speakers. One thing is to verify Sapir-Whorf, which makes the scientists happy, but also to make the language usable for all the applications that I've talked about. Yeah. As I said, this is part of the goal of my talk, to get people interested in learning this. I'm open to forming some kind of group to speak lojban, of course. Let's just meet in channel lojban. Yeah. And also, of course, further research into how to actually employ this with computers. I've said I haven't investigated any of these ideas. It's just, yeah. So, now for further reading, just as I've said, check out the paper version. This is the URL. Prefix it by HTTP if you want. And